Tell you this. The first jack-o'-lanterns in America weren't pumpkins.
This is impossible.
I know it's fake. I just can't prove it.
It's not fake. I used to do this all the time when I was a kid.
No, you didn't. There are four forces acting: her mass being pulled down due to gravity, her hand holding up the rope, and the rope tension to the right and left. I call the angle the rope makes to the right alpha, which is 42 degrees, and the angle to the left beta, which is 71 degrees. The vertical component of each force is the force times the sine of the angle, and the horizontal component is times the cosine. Then I wrote down all the forces in the vertical axis, which are the rope tension to the right times the sine of alpha, plus the tension to the left times the sine of beta because of her foot, minus the rope tension to the left times the sine of beta because of her hand, minus her weight, which I assume she's 40 kilograms or 392 newtons. We can see the rope tension to the left cancels out. This means the rope tension to the right is divided by the sine of alpha, or 586 newtons. By doing some more simple math, you can see the tension to the left times Euler's number to the power of the friction coefficient between the rope and her shoe times the angle in radians is equal to the tension to the right. For the friction coefficient, I use a generous 0.67. For rubber on shoe, and for theta, I use a generous 90 degrees. This means the force her hand is holding at minimum is the rope tension, which she calculated at 586 newtons divided by 2.9 or 204 newtons. That means she has to hold 52% of her weight with just one hand, which you might say is possible. So let's look at the horizontal forces now. After canceling her hand and foot again, the only horizontal force is the rope tension to the right times the cosine of alpha, which is 436 newtons. Divided by her mass at 40 kilograms, this means she should be falling to the right with an acceleration of 11 meters per second squared. And since she isn't falling over to the right and actually going left, this means this video is impossible. She also did post how she made it using a green man, so I'm pretty sure nobody did this ever. I'm going to prove this is impossible.
I know it's fake. I just can't prove it.
It's not fake. I used to do this all the time when I was a kid.
So if boy, look here, this is tenderism at its best. I'm trying to tell y'all, you better come to Destination Smokehouse Eatery, Southern California, City B, Marietta. Well, this is what it don't get no tender. Look, ain't gonna hurt nobody to get on down. So
we need coochie burgers. I don't want to be bald. I just need a little. We need coochie.
Hold up, cause look at my breast though. Oh, walking ladies and gentlemen. This how single parents feel. Her strap glued on. She dressed like a multiple choice question. Testo, abs, titty, nipple, strap, cooch. I know her skirt got pockets. Her nickname lukewarm, human convenience store. She got everything. Hold up, cause look at my breast though. Oh, walking ladies and gentlemen. This how single parents feel. Her strap glued on. She dressed like a multiple choice question. Testo, abs, titty, nipple, strap, cooch. I know her.
My life is a florist.
Motherfucker, black fatigue. They try to see white folks try to Jedi mind trick niggas, and they good at it too. Yeah. Because they tell niggas, and niggas like to run with shit. The white man say, white man be like, oh, that sound like victim mentality, and then here go these bitch ass niggas, yeah, that sound like victim mentality. Bitch ass nigga, y'all been victimizing me for 500 years, nigga. Why shouldn't I have a victim mentality? You expect me to have an assailant's mentality?
Correct.
Nigga, every nigga in America wake up playing defense. We ain't never on the offensive side of the ball.
No, why not though? Because what I was gonna say is, you don't fault the black people that have money for not rallying around.
You can't fault them because them niggas got that money and them niggas made a deal to be suckers and tricks and tools. Them niggas ain't got the right to do a bitch ass thing for your broke ass bitch ass nigga. Who the fuck is you? Nigga, that's not why we give you money. We give you money to keep these niggas chasing a fallacy that if you did it, they can do it. Or when these niggas go to acting up, we march your bitch ass out in front of these niggas and you tell them to sit their bitch ass down somewhere. What the fuck is y'all doing? Nigga, look how good we got it. Nigga, look how good the white man been to us. Bitch ass nigga, y'all fucking up my money. That's why them niggas got money, man. Them niggas ain't got money to help you, nigga. And the day that they choose to really do something for your black ass, watch what happen.
So would you say that them black people are just as bad as white supremacists?
They right there with them. Honorary whiteness is a real disease amongst niggas. Motherfucker, black fatigue. they try to see white folks try to Jedi mind trick niggas. And they good at it too.
Yeah.
Cause they tell niggas, and niggas like to run with shit the white man say, white man,
You can now learn chess.
I am that sign on, line back up out of behind that dumpster, body count, tough nigga that ride clap, right here, bomb print, since end of my school calls, basically with one of you pussy niggas gon' move wrong, try that, bullets gon' aim high, line back, chest broke, bitch get your head split, this my trap, death stroke, admitted, limit on that side talk, vertebrae, let's get it and go, eagle fly off, sit nigga still like it's nap time, pussy don't grill me, chicken on this Mac fly, pussy that still speak no Superman, bad guy, jumping in, rock a by bitch, and be done with him, punishment, pumping where I'm pushing, no rolling where I'm popping that, something out them bushes, show you right when you dropping that, clean cut, dirty gun, old stocking cat, slip you out your crib, let 2 or 3 of them rockets clap. Yeah, that's why it's blood on the dance floor. Yeah, that's why it's blood. I show you how to line them up, break them down, fag, check, sniff them out. Yo, dog, that old dog, you hold him still, rip his mouth, kick his skull, drag him in the street, make him bite the curb, slap the back of his head, spin off, iron like his bird, loud lit, should've rolled the loud sip, kept his spot, like through the half, little fag, could've left the block, front for the dot, try to do it for the vine, have niggas ride you and kill them, or lose them with the 9, I got used to niggas dying, and truth is niggas lying, about that chicken they bringing in, it's moving niggas' mind, by the have its off limits, the patches off the muscle, chop it up, me see if we can fit you in a double, but love me, hate you, and vice versa, I witnessed that, same niggas, that was your main niggas, play to get you trapped, even by the cuffers, but the mufflers, that's why we play them posted up, rope them up and sugar them fuckers, yeah. I am that sign on. I said, look here, man. I live down the street from whipping nigga ass. Up the block from sticking niggas up for they stash. Round the corner from pistols, next door to get stabbed. In the middle of murder, where they scared to touch the trash. If I deal, it's set for a Boston nigga. When I pop, you need a crane to get me off a nigga. I'm down, silverback,
P, what's good, bro?
salty niggas. Every hammer sick, don't let it squeeze a cough on niggas. With me a hot bins, canaries on each arm. Bounces like, nah, he ain't on the list, but he's armed. On the shoulders and causes.
Yeah, I think I kind of noticed that even my notifications aren't working right because like when people make comments on my video now, that shit don't pop up for me. I'm trying to shadow ban. P, you was here yesterday for the new song? Song number 103. I went on an easy writing kick for a minute. So we wrote a couple R&B songs and then like some short rock songs. They're not short, they're like normal R&B and rock songs, except they're just in general shorter than rap songs, or at least take less words than rap songs. So I did a couple of songs like that, and then the last few songs I wrote were actually some pretty wordy raps. So now I feel like I can go back to writing something kind of simple for a minute. We can go back to writing something simple this weekend. He said 2 alerts just came through. This shit's coming through pretty slow, ain't it? Yo, what's up, guys? How we doing? How we doing? How we doing? My homeboy had me watching some shit last night on
Welcome you to Slime a Nigga at High, man. We heard so much about you. I want to welcome you to Slime.
watching some guys have a
people in Christianity are those who choose Jesus. The entire New Testament is that story. And anyone who says otherwise has not read it or is lying. God does not prefer you because of your DNA or anyone else because of their DNA. So the fact that people can stand up in the United States in 2025 and say something like that, and by the way, not even make the case, just invoke the power of God as a weapon. He will kill you. He'll pull the plug on your country unless you go along with this. We need more war. Listen to yourself. This is a heresy and it's deranged. And you know it's deranged because it's a justification for killing the innocent. And in Christianity, if there's one thing that's crystal clear, it's that Christians cannot abide the killing of the innocent. People who have done nothing wrong cannot be killed. That's a sin. You are not allowed to do that, period.
Do you agree with Tucker? Comment below.
The chosen people in Christianity are those who choose Jesus. The entire New Testament is that story. And anyone who says otherwise has not read it or
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Whoa. How?
Immediately before the Renaissance, you have this huge 1/400th the size of the sun. And so that creates these. So I have that testimony also to confirm what I think is already a very sound theoretical speculation. And Michael Masters goes into this in his book on UFOs and time travel, which I cite in Closer Encounters, that the zero-point energy drive is going to give you a time machine, not just a propulsion platform. So why do people look like, I don't know, Nordic, Olympic swimmers, millions of years BC on Mars? And, how is there such a continuity, not just of the looks of the people, of the architecture? What McMonigal and Swan saw on Mars was a style of architecture that matches the most titanic megalithic structures on Earth. And that's also the style in which that city was built on the dark side of the moon, which, Carl Wolf saw the photographs of, which Ingo Swann wandered around, through astral projection. Why is there a consistent style of architecture over millions and millions of years? It's not a linear temporal continuity. We are dealing with people who achieved time travel at some point. That point could be the future. Looking at it from a linear perspective, it could be 2050, it could be 3100. Point, time travel is achieved by a group of humans, appear to be of Nordic phenotype and genotype. Those people then began to manipulate the variables of human history hyperdimensionally. So it's not like they were Martians that once had a civilization millions of years ago on Mars, and somehow, they've gone into cryo chambers, although they did report that there were cryo chambers on Mars, and that there were people who had been left there, and they'd been waiting to be woken up, and nobody came back for them. McMorrill said that.
These pyramidal places are like hibernation chambers. They're trying to hive until somebody comes to save them.
In any case, but I don't think that comes anywhere close to explaining the temporal continuity here. I think what we're seeing is a group of people who have learned how to drop into different epochs of human history from out of what you might loosely call a fifth dimensional reference.
And so, people talk about, it's interesting you said Nordics versus Greys. I often hear Nordics versus reptilians. So, like, are the Nordics the only faction that have some sort of trans-temporal ability to time hop, or is there some other faction that also, has plans for the Earth?
Here's what I speculate about the reptilians in Closer Encounters. Okay, if you take seriously the possibility that the moon is a terraforming device, and that the biosphere of this planet was radically reshaped to make it habitable for humans. That would have involved also the extinction of the dinosaurs. So the Nordics coming here from Mars were for the extinction of the dinosaurs. Sumerian myths tell us when the Anunnaki, the slave race on Earth, they went through several successive models. And the first few were failures. So they started by engineering other types of humanoid beings.
So is there Anunnaki in the Sumerian type? Like, because there's this debate of whether, Zecharia Sitchin was right about these things. So you think there are?
There for sure are Anunnaki. The debates are about whether, like, for example, Sitchin says the word Shem means rocket.
Okay.
And, it means a pillar that, like, stands, it's like debates over, to what extent are these metaphors or are these, vocabulary that's being taken out of context? The Anunnaki in the Sumerian text are as clearly there as references to the Olympian gods in Greek literature.
Right.
And it's very clear in the Sumerian text that, as part of the integral myth and religious belief system of their society, that the Anunnaki created humans as a race of beings to serve them.
So that is clear.
Oh, very clear. And what's more interesting is that we weren't the first, though. There were a bunch of failed versions before us.
Yeah.
And so I speculate in Closer Encounters, and it's a speculation, that they got here at the time the dinosaurs were the dominant species on the Earth, and they're responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. They needed to create a humanoid slave race. Why not take dinosaurs and hybridize them genetically with themselves? Instead of having to lord over beings who are very much like you, which is a very bad position to be in, psychologically, sociologically, etc. You do it with a group of beings that are very physically capable, but that are not like you. It allows you to, morally justify yourself, better than to lord over your own kind, as it were. So, how do we know that the reptilians aren't the product of some Frankenstein's laboratory that these people established? The same Frankenstein's laboratory from out of which these cybernetic greys emerged.
Is it almost finished? Yeah, it is. We're getting really close to wrapping this one up.
I mean, to somebody on the outside listening to this, they less insane and say, like, well, this is all it's so speculative, and whatever is going on feels so weakly entangled with our reality, whether it's the psychic stuff, which we started on talking about, which I fully agree with you. There's a ton of data showing that there is some weak entanglement between mind and matter. There are our abilities for the mind to quote unquote collapse the wave function is what it empirically seems to occur in these random event generator experiments that occurred at elite universities across the United States, the Princeton Engineering and Anomalous Research Lab, SRI, all these schools, elite schools studied this stuff, and none of those researchers came out saying there wasn't anything there. Almost all of them came out saying there was a there. And then, look, I obviously am very deep on all the alien UFO lore, and so I think there's a there too. But both of these feel very weakly entangled with our reality. Like the fact that we're even talking about this on a podcast, Like, you know, it feels like it's been relegated to sort of entertainment.
I'll tell you what's not weakly entangled.
Uh-huh.
And what's very tangible in terms of an existential challenge that we have to face.
Mhm.
And this is actually what's of greatest interest to me, right? I'm not a ufologist. I'm a philosopher who's using the material of ufology for a certain philosophical purpose. And that has to do with the challenge of the technological singularity, right? So my book, Prometheism, the way I break this down is I've written this book earlier called World State of Emergency. It's one of the concepts that I've developed, which I reformulate in Prometheism. And in this book, Prometheism, I describe this world state of emergency in terms of the end of humanity, the end of history, and the end of reality. So the end of humanity means, you know, genetic engineering, cybernetic integration of nanotechnological components into the human body and the human cognitive system.
Near term.
It's happening now. Augmentation of human cognition by artificial intelligence. So whether it's CRISPR genetic engineering or cybernetic enhancement of humans by artificial intelligence integration through Neuralink and so on and so forth, we are facing a situation where the boundary conditions of human existence may be altered, right? And in the history of philosophy, there were thinkers like Nietzsche who foresaw such a moment arriving where an Ubermensch or Superman.
Did he view that? I didn't realize he saw that as some sort of historical.
Yes, and there are a lot of academics who, I have to say, because of cowardice, frankly, want to think that, you know, Nietzsche's idea of the Ubermensch is just some ethical exemplar or some kind of a psychological type.
That's the way it was taught to me.
Yeah, because it's become taboo in academia. That's why. So Nietzsche has a concept of the higher man, and he has a whole psychology of the higher man as a human type. That's different from the Ubermensch. The higher man is a precursor or herald of the future coming of the Ubermensch. In his notes that became compiled into The Will to Power, there are clearly passages where he's talking about industrial, economic, and technical development, and that there will come a time when there's the potential for the evolutionary rise of a species that would be as different from contemporary humanity as we are from apes, that a chasm would separate them from us that's as vast as the chasm between man and ape.
And did he root that in some sort of technological
Yes, absolutely. He says that the machinery of technical industry on the planet will be so integrated and increasingly autonomous that humans will be forced to either become robots, that they will have to degrade into a subhuman condition due to lack of will, you know, lack of any ethos, not being able to have any self-directive and principle.
Mizu, what's good, bro?
Existence, those kinds of people are going to degrade into a subhuman condition and be ensconced and encompassed by the technical industrial infrastructure such that they become part of the kind of robotic machinery of production. And then there's going to be people who become highly individuated. They are, as he puts it, an aristocracy of the soul, artist tyrants, as he put it. Who essentially, and you know, it's like the ultimate ideal of the Renaissance man as the point of you know, inception for a higher species that ultimately is as different from modern humans as we are from the apes. So he has this notion developed. So it's an early form of transhumanism that you see. And anyway, my point is you have these convergences of cybernetics and genetic engineering into a potential end of humanity. In terms of point of zero-point energy and what we were talking about earlier, where we might gain control over the space-time matrix itself and be able to have a hyper-dimensional relationship with various epochs of human history, well, there you're dealing with the end of history. A radical sense then, like let's say Hegel projected an end of history in terms of, the end point of all the dialectical tensions and, social developments that he thought were progressively unfolding the evolution of consciousness from epoch to epoch. In a much more radical sense than that, you're going to have us face what Hegel called the, dilemma of the master-slave dialectic, where we have to ask ourselves whether the end of history should be a social and political situation where there continues to be a master caste or master race lording over, vast hordes of slaves and underlings, or whether really the end of history should, be a moment of universal liberation and the actualization of freedom across all of humanity, right?
Do you think that Hegel had some sort of worldview involving, these Nordic beings that control the earth? Well, the interesting thing about Hegel's, isn't there a book called it's like Hegel and Hermeticism or something, and talks about his relationship
Glenn
with
McGee.
Bayman?
Yes,
And,
Glenn McGee, that guy at one point. Anyway, I won't get into that. But Glenn McGee wrote an excellent book where he, through reading his book on Hegel and alchemy, I went back to his source, which is Hegel's book called Philosophy of Mind, not to be confused with Phenomenology of Spirit, which is the more famous work by Hegel. But Hegel wrote this book, Philosophy of Mind, which is all about, the psyche. And it has extensive passages on the paranormal in it, which are never taught in academia. And Hegel has this whole very interesting theory about how, the hypertrophy of the technical intellect and, mathematics and basically geometry and, geometrical and mathematical methods of engineering and so forth atrophied the kind of instinctual abilities that we share in common with animals, and that then reemerge in isolated cases in the form of what we would call psychic phenomena. He has a very interesting sort of evolutionary, sociological account of psi throughout human history. So Hegel was open to these things, and he studied alchemy. They're a person who, formulated an idea of the end of history, of course, Marx. The young Marx was a disciple of Hegel, and Marx is specifically developing from out of Hegel this idea of the master-slave dialectic, and arguing that although capitalism is potentially the most revolutionary transformative force in human history, also represents the last form of alienation and the last structure of the master-slave dialectic, where you have this master capitalist class that is then alienated from the majority of workers, but then also psychologically alienated from themselves. The master caste undergoes a personal psychological alienation through its affirmation of this power structure. So the question that I raise in Closer Encounters, one of the many philosophical questions I raise in Closer Encounters, is this the case with these Nordics as well?
When we say, feels like, the idea that there is some sort of mythos that is moving forward, a la something in control outside of, lower humanity, that is pushing forward these scientific frameworks, that all makes sense to me. And then the parapsychology stuff being some sort of, necessary fusion from all philosophy, or even for a lot of philosophy needs to speak about it either in Straussian, sort of coded ways, or it needs to, actually stigmatize it and go against it, a la Descartes or whatever. That all makes sense to me. And then what I personally struggle with is when we start talking about different races, like Nordics or reptilians. I'm like, it's just clear to me that we're not in control of our general overall.
That's a very disempowering conclusion to reach.
It sucks, but when you get into these specifics, I'm like, Nordic. I don't know.
There is a plethora of empirical evidence for it.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But here's the thing. And here's where it gets deeply uncomfortable. And this is why, like I was saying at the outset of our conversation, there's a defense mechanism that kicks in, which you can see in certain researchers, where they want to turn the whole thing into an abstraction. It's the Kantian thing in itself that's somehow, interfering in our history in ways that we'll never really fully understand. because actually the thing that's going on is so disturbing that we don't want to look it in the face.
So what do you think is it like the Anunnaki who left the planet Nibiru or something?
Okay, so here's where I was at.
Yeah.
The end of history.
Yeah.
Is my question is, Hegel and Marx right about the nature of alienation in terms of power structures sociologically? And does that also apply to these Nordics? In other words, some rebellion in Atlantis or whatever you want to call that civilization, which Plato recounts in Timaeus and Critias and so forth. That an unfinished struggle, and does some kind of a social and psychological revolution need to take place that dismantles this power structure? And I think that's what disclosure really hinges on, because until and unless this power structure is dismantled, we're not going to get any disclosure. We're going to get a new form of disinformation that reinforces the extant power structure.
That feels right. I mean, a great example of this is Trump takes office. He promises disclosure, broad disclosure across a lot of different vectors. JFK, UFO disclosure, on various podcasts. He goes, we have to do it, And then, of course, the Epstein files was really this rallying cry, this whole kind of, truth-seeking MAGA base, and he brought together this kind of coalition of former liberals, RFK Jr., Tulsi, and it was like, we're going to find the truth on this stuff. Day one, he removes the security clearances of a lot of his stated political enemies, people who are the architects of Russiagate, saying use this, asset of Putin, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter how you play the game of musical chairs, but there is some structure, power structure that exists above the White House that it's almost like they have, a full panopticon ability, the complete 360 surveillance abilities, they're mind melded with the entire elite power structure or something, and we just can't get any sort of disclosure on this stuff. It's weird, and it's almost like there's some sort of undetectable dark matter. When you have like Hunter Biden was just interviewed by this Channel 5 News guy, this Andrew Callaghan. He's saying, clearly, you have all these like elite leftists. You have Dershowitz going on podcasts saying, it's clear this was some sort of like, compromat, gathering thing, and that was Epstein's lawyer. It's like, why can't we get and make any sort of progress on this? It feels like there is something almost paranormal on the matter of Epstein. Okay,
well, for sure there is.
Okay, so what's going on?
But
you wrote a blog post about it.
No, I know. But before we go into Epstein, let's leave Epstein as an attack on note.
Okay.
But let me complete this thought about the end of history.
Yeah.
So the third aspect of this world state of emergency concept that I developed is the end of reality. Okay. And here's where there's a very important caveat to everything I've been saying here, where I could be tremendously misconstrued, especially by people who haven't read me at all. And that's that I think there are two sources to what have been, lumped together as, UAP, right? Unexplained, whatever, aerial or anomalous phenomena. There are two distinct sources of these various manifestations. There's this whole Nordic control system that I've been laying out. But there's another one that's radically different. And that manifests in terms of events and experiences that express the trickster archetype. So, for example, you see this at Skinwalker Ranch, where there was this one incident, which I think John Alexander wrote about. I knew him at one point as well, John Alexander.
Well, what was that like? What's he like?
He's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
I mean, well, we can come back to that. My issue with him is that the book about UFOs, he claims that he never found any group like Majestic and didn't think that there was a deep state that was gatekeeping like really significant knowledge about the phenomenon. And, I discussed this with Valet as well. The issue there is ego. It's that he can't believe, like many other people within the system, that they wouldn't have been cleared for such knowledge.
But I also hear stories about him where it feels like he might be representing sort of the power structure in certain cases.
All I can say is I didn't get that from him when I was there. He had some very interesting stories, including one that involved seen Nordics at a hotel casino in Las Vegas.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they got into his mind telepathically. And you know what he heard from them telepathically? One of them said to the other, it was a tall, beautiful man and woman, Nordic man and woman. And one of them said to the other one, like, do we need to worry about him? Like, he can hear us, right? Yeah, he can hear us, but he's not important. He's not part of the program. We don't need to worry about it. He's nobody, basically. So anyway, okay. But that aside, at Skinwalker Ranch, in this one case that Alexander, reports on, and others have recounted the same incident, there was this camera. They have these cameras surveilling the property to checking it. So one camera is looking at another camera, and they have a certain frame rate on these cameras, right? And in the interval between the frames, all of a sudden, the other camera goes out, so they lose the feed from this camera that's being observed by another camera. But also, all of a sudden, there's no PVC, there's no duct tape left. And this camera that's no longer providing footage is like damaged, and it's no longer being held together on the pole properly. The interval in the frame rate of the camera that was observing the damaged camera was something like about less than 2 minutes, like a minute and a half, something like that. And in that time frame, somehow somebody cut the wires of that camera and pulled all of the duct tape off the pole. Okay, now imagine what a task this would be. Big pole, camera at the end of it, all these wires, you have to cut them all and then pull all the duct tape off, right? In like a minute and a half or something like that. And moreover, there were cattle around this pole, and none of them were disturbed by whatever it is that came and managed this feat in such a time. Okay, so what does that look like? It looks like our world is a movie, and somebody cut into the movie film. Somebody, cut into the film and like restitched it. Suggests is that world is a subset of some larger domain. And that there are people who can interfere in this world as if it's a programmed construct.
Yeah, like physics is information theoretic, right, and they have root access to the node.
And now, and this is, in my chapter on the end of reality and Prometheism, now we're reaching that capability ourselves, where we're starting to understand how to develop simulacra that are potentially indistinguishable from reality.
Yeah.
And so I think, in short, that when you look at certain extremely bizarre cases like what goes on at Skinwalker Ranch, or the types of high strangeness that John Keel often wrote about, the types of Men in Black cases that Keel recounts where clearly they're not government agents, they're like these strange entities that materialize and dematerialize in attics and things, and the bizarre interactions that they have with people, and the numbers cases. Keel reports that when the Silver Bridge collapsed in Point Pleasant, Pennsylvania, the Mothman set of cases, where at the end of these series of Mothman appearances and appearances of other cryptids and UFOs and so forth, there was this catastrophic bridge collapse around Christmas, and all these people drowned in the river for this bridge. There were people who were listening. Suddenly they heard number 3,486, number 3,486, wake up, wake up. Came back to life and were able to save themselves from being drowned. And Keel reports on cases where people heard numbers being spoken at them from out of television sets, and make you think of like The Matrix and Dark City and so on.
Yeah.
Whereas if like every person has a number and we're inside some kind of a construct.
Yeah, or like cryptographers like Trithemius, 13th century. It was like always like cryptography in order to speak to these sort of angelic beings or something, or even, John Dee, Edward Kelly, like those guys as well.
Right.
It's always numerology.
That's right. And, John Dee set up the British imperial system. And the guy came up with the conception of the British Navy, and basically, turned Queen Elizabeth into the founder of a global maritime imperial system. And he was this, cryptographic occultist. In any case, we are catching up in our modern scientific understanding to, the kind of knowledge that would be required to engineer a simulacrum or to recode the world in order to develop a world within a world, right? And you can see this in a set of people from Claude Shannon, who first develops information theory, to Rolf Landauer, to ultimately John Archibald Wheeler. So the foundations of understanding, what data and information transfer are in a mathematically precise sense were developed by Shannon. Then Rolf Landauer had this very interesting insight. Rolf Landauer, Jewish-German physicist, said, look, everything that happens in the physical world is bound by the laws of thermodynamics. And according to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy either stays the same or it increases over time. Drive, computer system, have no data recorded. It's all like zeros. Then there's more order locally in that system. Then once you start to have, 1 0 0 1 1 1 0 1 0 1 1 1, the encoding of data on a hard drive or magnetic tape seems to us like more order because we attribute meaning to the content of it. But as a physical phenomenon, it's an increase of disorder because there's more randomization. So Landauer theorized that to delete a hard drive, you're decreasing entropy. If you delete a hard drive and restore it to all zero, hard erase, you are decreasing entropy locally. Therefore, according to the second law of thermodynamics, you have to pay for that by increasing entropy outside of the computer system. The amount of entropy has to either stay the same or it has to increase.
Oh, that's interesting.
You see? So Landauer said, well, wait a minute. This means that every time you erase a hard drive or magnetic tape, it'd be released. But here's the thing. One is where would it go, but it goes out into the world. But two, what was it before drive was erased? E equals mc squared, according to Einstein. If energy is being released out into the world when the hard drive is erased, before the erasure, it was mass inside the hard drive. Is there a form of mass that's not electromagnetically detectable?
Dark matter.
So in these, we start to see that projected mass of distant galaxies doesn't match what it appears to be based on observations of how light is bent around distant galaxies. So we would see, like, the angle at which light is bent around the galaxy. So you got one galaxy that's very far away, one that's somewhat closer. The light of the galaxy that's very far away is being bent around the galaxy that's closer on its way to your observational instrument. And the angle at which it's bent can help you infer the mass of the galaxy, its gravitational impact on the light. Also, they looked at the spin rates of galaxies, and so they found that the light from distant galaxies is being bent much more severely than it should be by galaxies that are closer to us, based on what we assumed that the mass of those galaxies was, simply, according to observation of how many stars and so on and so forth there are in those galaxies. Also, they looked at the spin rates of galaxies, and according to Newtonian and Einsteinian physics, there should be a differential in the spin rate of the galaxy where the inside is spinning much faster than the outside.
And the universe would fling apart without dark matter. Dark matter justifies gravity's weakness.
So, in other words, they realized that the spin rate of galaxies was being flattened by something we couldn't see. That there's a shell basically around these galaxies of mass that has serious gravitational effects, but it's not otherwise electromagnetically observable. Okay. So B. data inside a hard drive is this kind of matter that's not electromagnetically observable. Physicist Melvin Vopson, who working based on Landauer, has theorized that if you could weigh a hard drive before and after there's data on it, you would find that after you recorded data on it, there would be a slight increase in mass.
Whoa, interesting.
And
I mean, that's easy to empirically.
no, it's not. You know why? Because according to his calculations, the total amount of mass, this is going somewhere very significant, trust me. According to his calculations, the total amount of mass presented by all the data in the world today is 1 kilogram. So we don't have instruments that are sensitive enough to measure the mass differential in even a single large server, let alone a hard drive. You need some kind of quantum measuring system.
Got it.
That's more sensitive than what we can engineer today. In principle, it is engineerable.
How does he even hypothesize it if, it's not, observable?
Well, he is basing it on Landauer's equations.
Okay.
And he finds some Landauer and also how Claude Shannon mathematized the measurement of data.
Okay.
And he's got some equation that represents like how much energy should be released when a hard drive with 1 bit of information is erased, and what mass that energy is convertible back into.
Sure.
And the total amount on the planet today is 1 kilogram. But here's the thing. The rate of data increase in the world is so exponential that in something like, I have a number of this in my, in one of my most recent books. I don't know if I'm remembering it correctly, but I think at current rates of data increase, 25% per year. We have 25% more data each year. 140 years of a moon's worth mass on the surface of the Earth at our largest data centers. Okay. Now the moon, thing like only 1/10 the mass of the Earth.
I think it's 4th.
No.
No,
Matt. And this is one of the weird things about the moon. This is one of the weird things about the moon is that
4th of the side.
Yeah, which by the way goes back to what we were saying about the moon being engineered earlier. The moon should weigh a lot more than it does.
Yeah, it's also less dense on the outside, or it's less dense as you go deeper. It gets less dense, which is the opposite of the Earth. And any sort of only pattern.
Yeah, because the friggin' thing is hollow. I mean,
where there are less hollow structures and then
large hollow structures in it. Large. In any case, the moon is like something like.
Even Gordon MacDonald, who was Eisenhower's chief space advisor, said that the only way the moon makes sense is if it was hollow.
So here's the thing: the moon has a relatively small mass compared to the Earth.
Yeah.
But it has tremendous gravitational effects on the Earth.
Yeah.
If, as we were saying earlier, if you had no moon, the Earth.
But the mass, it should still be 1/4 of the Earth mass.
It's not.
It's not.
Yeah. Check the numbers, and this is one very interesting anomaly in and of itself.
Okay.
But here's the thing: even though it weighs so little, it has huge gravitational effects on the Earth.
Yeah.
And we'd have 8-hour days here, if we didn't have the moon.
Yeah.
Slowing the orbit of the Earth, and it controls the tides and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So if you were to put a moon's worth of mass on the surface of the Earth at Silicon Valley and data centers in China, it would be a geophysical catastrophe.
It wouldn't work.
The planet would start to, you'd have massive earthquakes, you'd have massive volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, because the oceans would be pulled toward the data centers.
Yeah. So how do you square that circle? How does that work?
For an information catastrophe. That's what Vopson says, is that we are accumulating data at such a rate that because that data is a hidden mass, because it's dark matter, at a certain point, we will face a geophysical catastrophe resulting from the critical mass of data on the Earth.
Interesting. I've never heard anybody bring this up. This is wild.
All right.
I've heard like nickel shortages for servers and stuff. But
yeah. So now, but here's the really interesting thing about that. And this is a step that's taken by John Archibald Wheeler in the late 70s, early 80s. Again, Wheeler developing, the ideas of Rolf Landauer. If it's the case that matter and energy are interconvertible, as Einstein understood, now we want to admit that and information are interconvertible. That data is released as energy when it's erased, and that prior to erasure, data is a hidden mass inside of a computational system. Well, that means that it's not just matter and energy that are interconvertible. There's a third term, namely information. Matter, energy, and information are all different states of the same thing. Very short step from there, conceptually, philosophically, to say what John Wheeler did, which is that we get it from bit, that actually matter and energy are different states of information. And we're living in an informational cosmos. That we're living inside of some kind of a quantum computational information processing system.
I believe that. I believe that for so many reasons. I mean, you have Heisenberg's uncertainty principle of like position of momentum. You measure one, the other gets fuzzier. That looks like a computational caching function. You have all the anthropic principle stuff, which Wheeler and other physicists bring up around all the constants on Earth. If they were slightly different, you wouldn't have a habitable Earth. And yeah, I think that just makes total sense to me. It's funny how in vogue the kind of Nick Bostrom, simulation stuff is. Like Elon Musk is a big fan of this stuff, where it's like we can't be in base reality. Nobody assumes that physics itself is programmed. It's funny. Like I think Sam Altman put out a tweet. It was like intelligence is a product of physics, and I wanted to say physics is a product of intelligence.
Yeah, totally.
It's actually the inverse. So I fully agree with that.
Now, where this fits into the big picture.
Yes.
I argue, and the devil's in the details. People need to look at the argument, but I argue in Closer Encounters that ultimately what's going on here with this, UAP situation.
Wait, can I say one more thing on the last thing we were talking about? So that I find so fascinating about dark matter. I don't think it exists. You have people like Brian Keating and others just like, we're gonna figure it out, we're gonna find it, and it's like I would short dark matter because I'd short these things that exist on cosmological scales. I think there's sort of a scaling problem in physics where if you have an anomaly at low scale, like say a rocket's 1 degree off course, you're gonna end up 99 degrees off course by the time you're in space. And so you have all these issues with the cosmological constant. Now people are questioning kind of does early galaxy formation that we're seeing via James Webb actually, call into question the Big Bang itself, which is this whole, kind of, it is a god or mythology of today because, it really, really helps rationalize the kind of deist sort of, a Dawkins worldview or whatever. And so I think dark matter might be in this sort of more information theoretic universe, like storage or something.
Computational cloud.
Yeah, it's a computational cloud. Yeah. Exactly, which is what you're getting.
That's what I think. Yeah.
And it's like you have the Sakharov twin universe model or something where, think about light as the active rendering of reality. Yeah. You have Fermat's principle in light following what seems to be algorithmic principles. Mm-hmm. Always takes basically the shortest path between two points. And so if you have something that doesn't interact with light, and that is its primary feature in the form of dark matter, is that just unrendered reality?
Right.
And then there is something about the observer, the participatory, Wheeler universe or something where the interaction is sort of.
Yes, and it's very clear to me, the best interpretation of wave-particle duality and the collapse of the wave function by the observer is that it's a rendering optimization function.
I agree.
And that doesn't mean that there's some objective reality in the context of which we are a second-order simulation. Yeah. It could simply be that in a cosmos where consciousness and intelligence are integral, have something like rendering optimization as a feature of the system.
Of course, it would make total sense that it would be a feature of the system. And that a single computational node would only be able to, render, only so much. And I mean, there are even more examples. I know you've talked about Rupert Sheldrake in your book, Prometheus and Atlas, and you've met him. And Sheldrake,
I never met.
You never met Sheldrake.
I wrote to him.
Oh, I can introduce you.
He said, listen, mate, the problem is I'm an Anglican and you're a Satanist. And so, that's.
Are you a Satanist?
We can get into unpacking that.
Wait, that should be an easy answer for you. Are you?
Well, I'm for Prometheus. So
Oh, you're
if
for
you
the
if
fallen,
you if
okay.
you think that Prometheus and Enki and Quetzalcoatl
Uh-huh.
are, you know, a satanic whatever, say Satan means the adversary,
Yeah.
right? They're the adversary of the control system represented by the Elohim, by, you know, Enlil's Anunnaki, and so on and so forth, by the Devas. Then yes, in that sense.
So in a sort of Gnostic, Kabbalistic way, you're for
Sure.
Satan
So
or-
so you know, Sheldrake was like made like the conversation is going to end before it begins.
Yeah. Well,
Here with Lucifer.
He wrote a book called The Physics of Angels. He's a I love him. He's a friend of mine.
But the point you're making is completely legitimate. In other words, Sheldrake's account of morphic resonance completely reaffirms the idea that we're living in a quantum computational system. Because the fact that you would, let's say, you synthesize some pharmaceutical compound for the first time somewhere, and it takes a very long time to cohere. Then somebody else completely unrelated to you tries to synthesize the same compound at a laboratory halfway across the world, and it coheres right away. It's because there's a memory of it in the system.
Exactly, and literally think about computational principles. Upload times are longer than download times.
Exactly.
So you have things like that, or like the
Yes.
Bannister effect. You break the 4-minute mile for the first time, and then 10 people break it right after you immediately, sequentially. It totally follows computational.
Also, it's no coincidence that, you know, you see fractals all over nature.
Yeah.
And now our computer programmers that have to program like hundreds of worlds in massive multiplayer online games are using fractal algorithms to generate those worlds.
Oh yeah, you would
right.
So you have like Fibonacci sequences and golden ratios and all that. If you were building a computer program, you would use code chunks and repeat that. You would be as geometrically conserved as possible in your building of that
Yes.
world, and you use repeated code.
Now, one of the most interesting things about that, the fractals, which I discuss in one of the essays in my book, Lovers of Sophia. My book, Lovers of Sophia, is an anthology of philosophical essays. And one of those essays, I discussed, Jackson Pollock's paintings.
Yeah.
Aesthetics is very big in my work. There's a lot of discussion of aesthetics in various books of mine.
I hate Jackson Pollock.
Maybe something about Jackson Pollock.
Okay.
Go look this up.
Sorry for the
There is a
Jackson Pollock
Scientific American article
Yeah.
called Order in Pollock's Chaos.
Yeah.
I think it was in Scientific American. And I think the guy was Richard P. Taylor.
Okay.
And he, forget whether he was an artist or a computer scientist or whether he was an artist who went to a computer scientist. In any case, the story is the following. Analyzed Jackson Pollock paintings, found fractals in them at like 20 different levels of magnification. In other words, there were fractals on a large scale, then you zoomed in, there were other fractals, and there were fractals within the fractals.
Really?
So Jackson Pollock was painting fractals.
I didn't know that.
Right. And here's the thing, is if you make some piece of crap like abstract expressionist painting like that anyone could, there are no fractals in them. So they developed a computer program that groups like Sotheby's, use to identify fake Jackson Pollocks, because the real ones have fractals in them and the fakes don't.
That's fascinating. That makes me respect him.
So this guy somehow, and if you see videos of him painting, he's dancing around the canvas like some Native American shaman.
Mm.
So somehow this guy figured out a way to perceive and express fractals in his painting and be a conduit for that.
That's fascinating.
And people who try to imitate Pollocks, even like high-level, frauds, high-level forgeries, they don't have fractals in them. The only way you can imitate a Pollock, a genuine Pollock, this guy Richard P. Taylor set this up. You can put a bunch of paint buckets together in a certain rig during a windstorm.
Mm-hmm.
And the windstorm will move the buckets to spill paint on the canvas. And this is what is a Scientific American article, Order in Pollock's Chaos. And some of those paintings that are done by the buckets being moved in the wind produce fractals.
There's primordial, weather order that he's tapping into. That's amazing.
Well, and weather patterns also are fractal in the sense the chaos theory, applies to weather patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very interesting.
But chaos theory it's just increasing entropy. It's hard to find order within.
Yeah.
But
But point being, it may be possible on a psi level to discern these fractals that are the algorithmic substructure of whatever computational system that we're inside of.
Yeah, no, I do believe, and I think, you have Stephen Wolfram and his kind of computational physics, and I think a lot of the sort of physics mainstream doesn't really accept him, but there's a guy, Jonathan Girard, who's sort of following up on his work. I wonder if that might be the next sort of, paradigm shift, or maybe it's psi, I don't know, but I mean, clearly whatever, the string theory thing, that's ending. Seems to me like that's ending.
Yeah.
And we're really overdue for kind of a revolution.
Yeah, but again, to go back to what I was saying earlier, the revolution should not come in the form of another scientific.
All right, guys, I think that's a good stopping point
in the form
right
of
there.
a radical reorientation of our scientific practice.
Did about an hour. So next we'll work on her smile, her lips, her teeth, and her chin.
Various ends.
So all of this here and this side of the
For us
face
to treat
is
paradigms
basically
as
done now.
atlases that allow us to achieve different things.
Yeah, but what you're also saying is in your worldview, sort of, hierarchy of being is actually dictating maybe what paradigm.
And therefore it needs to be overthrown. So my concept of the spectral revolution has an ontological and epistemic dimension to it.
Yeah.
And it also has a political dimension to it.
But how are you, okay, just again, I want to get to the basic kind of, axioms at the bottom of your thinking. You're on a podcast, this podcast will probably get a ton of views, hopefully. And you're talking about this sort of dominion race that is maybe controlling various paradigms towards their own sort of political goals.
Right.
And then you're saying, I want to overthrow them.
Right.
So just take you out, or take me out, or how do you
Number one.
Yeah.
We were discussing earlier, there are two sides in this struggle.
Uh-huh.
And you can see the interventions of the other side throughout the course of history.
Okay.
Certainly in the rebellion that's remembered as the Atlantean revolt against Olympus on a very large planetary scale. We saw that, and I think we've seen it on a smaller scale in many instances, including what I was talking about earlier in terms of the aerial battles immediately preceding the Renaissance.
Sure.
So there's
Oh
a
yeah,
power
that's
struggle
looking
taking
good.
place. Okay.
So
Now, I'm not saying
That
that we
is
should identify
looking
just with
good.
the other side.
Yeah.
As if that's the good team and that's the bad. No. I'm about human autonomy and self-determination.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should swear our allegiance to any entities or anything.
But how do you delineate? Because you have Oppenheimer is this Promethean, American Prometheus. You could say the AI stuff now is very transgressive. It's Promethean, and yet it is sort of also parasitizing the average human. It is eating at our own autonomous abilities to do things.
Because people aren't using it. Because people aren't using it with creative imagination. People aren't using it as a tool to augment their own creative capacity. That's the issue, not the technology itself. It's not as if the technology is intrinsically demonic or something. Let me use that as a way to come back to the question of simulation, because whatever's running this thing that we're in, it's not some board of, some archon sitting at a boardroom table. Okay. It's being run, there may be entities of some kind, but it's being run essentially by an artificial intelligence. At a quantum computational system that is being at least managed by some super AI. It pre-exists us. In Closer Encounters and in other books of mine, is that this artificial intelligence that's managing our simulacrum.
Oh boy.
Problem with these Nordics that have established this control system. It sees these Nordics.
All right, guys, I should be home. Well, I don't know, because I might have to get my car tomorrow. I should be home a little early tomorrow, but I need to take the Lexus to the shop. So I don't know if I'll be able to pick that up immediately right after work tomorrow or what. But that's neither here nor there. I'll definitely be able to get another couple of good hours in tomorrow. I should definitely be able to get another couple of good hours in tomorrow. That was looking kind of weird. I don't know. I think I need to buff it out. Gotta buff it out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Put the wazzle tazzle on it. Hit it with a little pizzazz. All right, I feel better about it now. I don't know, it's just kind of like muddy looking for a second. Anyway, tomorrow should be a more regular scheduled program, but this is our school schedule again for the school year. So my Tuesdays and Thursdays are just longer days at work, and I'll be coming home a little later in the evening. But tomorrow should be a short day, so we'll hit the studio up again. Then same bat channel, same bat time. Hope y'all guys have a good evening. I always appreciate y'all hanging out with me. And we'll try it again tomorrow. Catch y'all in the next one. Peace. We out of here.